Okay, what's going on, folks? Welcome back to the topics. It is your boy Mac here with another episode, and I'm here again with my lovely friend Mila. How you doing?
Hello, doing well. I don't know where that voice came from, but it came from somewhere, I guess.
Perfect. You ready? I was like, you ready to go?
Let's
All
do
right.
it.
How you been today?
Oh man, it's another week. I've been good, just getting stuff done. Feel like I'm
In Costa
rushing
Rica.
with all my things.
Yeah, it's so weird. Like I lose track of my days. I think it's well, last week I thought it was Tuesday when it was Thursday, and now it actually is Tuesday, and
Mhm.
some days it just feels like you don't go out for a couple days.
Yeah, I'm having to
Burn
like
out sun.
schedule time to like leave and and run or skate.
Yeah,
Uh, yeah.
for sure. Yeah. So we got a couple good topics today. We're gonna talk about the general strike in India and how history making and record breaking all that is. And we're also gonna talk about Elliot Page and how he came out and introduced himself to the world. And we got a few more topics if we have time too. So let's get right into this. So the general strike in India, that was some really big news. I'm sure some people have heard of it if you haven't already. Basically, India workers as well as a lot of farmers have pretty much taken to the capital, New Delhi, in record-breaking numbers. That's what I'm saying, about 250 million in total participation, and it's a general strike against the government. Pretty much, they they've been doing some shady, underhanded things, passing deregulation laws specifically against farmers during COVID, whenever everybody's locked down, kind of not able to protest. But you see how we protest here, probably back in when did we start protesting here? Maybe in May,
June. End
June.
of May, June, yeah.
Yeah, end of May and June. So I guess America knows better than any. Um, I guess, like something as grounding as COVID doesn't really even stop, kind of social unrest.
Yeah, and what's crazy is during COVID, we've seen social unrest I mean, continue, but like in almost every area of the world. Like Chile started last October and it kept going through COVID, through lockdown,
Yeah.
until they finally rewrote their constitution in October.
I think the same thing happened in Argentina, I believe.
Hmm.
The I'm not sure if it was, I think it was either the government or just the country itself was in so much debt that the government pretty much just had to cut a deal with corporations at like,
Mm.
they said they would pay 50% of the debt if pretty much whoever was holding it like just canceled the rest of it. It was really that bad.
Wow.
Argentina.
I have heard of people doing that, not entire countries. That's
Yeah,
interesting.
like the entire country of Argentina is just in the mud right now. Just that's pretty much what capitalism does to you. It's kind of similar to I guess this is kind of going off on a tangent. It's a little similar to the civil rights movement whenever a lot of those black leaders went overseas and learned about Marxism, and
Mm.
it kind of tried to permeate in America before McCarthyism kind of scared it away. It's it's a little bit like capitalism just kind of expanding from America and like kind of infiltrating its way to different countries and just impacting it in different ways and kind of bringing it back to India. That's really the biggest thing about that's like the main thing about the protest, right? Is the laws, their deregulation laws, specifically targeting farmers. Pretty much, the government um, uses the agriculture industry in India greatly. It's about 15% of their economy, so they subsidize a lot of that work. The government pretty much offers farmers guaranteed pay and pretty much protections protections against like a failed crop harvest or
Hmm.
pretty much like supplies refurbished. And the new laws would pretty much deregulate in a way that private investors could get involved within the companies and pretty much undercut prices, make the prices maybe not so guaranteed for the farmers, and kind of make it in a way that you see in developing capitalist countries, the peasant workers kind of getting forced out of their land because they can't afford to stay there and they get pushed into the cities. And that's really what this protest is about. The farmers don't want to give their land up, and I don't I don't begrudge them.
Yeah, and this is framed as a land rights issue, and it should be, and that's usually most of the conflicts that we see around the world is land rights and water rights. But I thought with this specifically, what the like deregulation did was essentially allow um like individual farm, basically like take out the middleman is how the government is framing it, and so like farms would be allowed to sell to like stores themselves where they previously weren't, but what it does is it takes away those subsidies, right?
Essentially, yeah. Well, for every good thing, there's also a bad thing. So you would be able to cut that middleman, but there would be a lot of protections you would lose as
Right.
well because you would be beholden to, multiple competing corporations instead of the government subsidizing and guaranteeing everything for you. So
Hmm.
that's a really big concern and is really understandable. This isn't something that's new in
No, we've seen
India.
it in America. We've seen it all around the US, or all around the world, and in the US especially.
I just think the inspiring thing is the numbers. You have 250 million people come basically taking part, in total. I don't know how long it's been going on. It's probably been about a week, but this is a revolution. There's a quote. There's a video on the internet. I wish I had it pulled up. I'll see if I can find it. But basically, there's this man talking to an Indian police officer, and he basically tells him in his language, like, "This is a revolution, sir." Like
Oh.
politely.
Yeah, and I don't know. That's really, that is like the numbers are staggering. I mean, just because of India's population, if a certain percentage of India is protesting, that means like a good percent of the world is protesting. And if you think about it,
Yeah, it's like two,
that's
three
a
percent of the
lot.
world. Yeah, it's
How
really
much?
like 2, 3% of the world. Like currently in a protest. Yeah, this well, India is the world's largest or second largest country behind China and right in front of America.
Yeah, they're like China and India are like neck and neck. I
Yeah.
want to say it's like 100,000. I have not checked since COVID hit, which is like a really depressing thing to say, but it's like 100,000. Like that's the difference between those two. I want to say like India itself is like 17% of the world's population,
My goodness, yeah,
right?
yeah, very
Yeah,
dense, very
it's a
dense.
lot.
Yeah.
Um,
And yeah, this issue really it's not new. The numbers are new, these kind of numbers, but there's been kind of ramifications of pretty much the farm industry kind of having struggles within like the past half decade, decade or so. There's been, I guess it's pretty common there for farmers to commit suicide. And yeah, the numbers, I know I didn't prep you for it, but yeah, the numbers even crazier. It's about 10,000 per year, like an
wow.
average. Yeah, 10,000 farmers commit suicide per year. But there was like a lot of other like a lot of other things before COVID. This was kind of an issue before COVID. So
And it just exacerbated it.
exactly, exactly. So what the issue is India being the second largest country in the world, it's a pretty big polluter. So they have a really serious problem with trying to get air quality control in that country. And it's not just the farming industry, but they have to burn their crops at the end of the seasons. Well, their trash, you know, so they have to burn their crops, their dry yields, and this obviously causes smoke. So one of the regulations, I guess one of the imposed regulations, was to tax the farmers for doing this. And while I guess it does discourage farmers from doing it, the government doesn't necessarily offer any alternatives to getting rid of the waste, like any shredders, any compost machines, anything like that. So I mean, farmers have no other way of going about their business. Like they're still peasant farmers, they're still peasants. So this is their way of protesting, is like burning, is continuing doing what they normally do, but obviously it is contributing to the problem because like this compound, it's a respiratory disease, COVID. So
Good
this,
point.
yeah,
Well,
it's,
another thing is like I know like slash and burn. I don't know if they're burning their fields or if they're burning their trash.
yeah, it's the trash. I think it
Oh,
might be
okay, okay,
it might be a combination of both, but they're not burning like good crops. Like
right.
they're
Well, I
sowing
was
it
gonna
and
say
harvesting it before they're like burning everything. I think it's just the process.
right. Well, after harvest, a common like agricultural practice that is actually really good for the soil is to burn the land because it's like super rich in nitrogen
Mhm.
and all of the stuff you need to like have a healthy plot of land.
Uh,
Um, and so my thought is like, wow, they can't practice that. Their yields are going to be lower, and then they're not receiving subsidies, and then all of that. But I mean, that this is like a classic thing that we see of like corporations to squeeze money out of people who do not have money. When these corporations are like banking off the poverty of the rest of the world, they are just going to tax. They're basically going to take away subsidies and then tax farmers for this solution to grid waste instead of like coming up with a collaborative solution to actually do something that, or like an alternative, because I understand like you can't, that does create like pollution, but
mhm.
this is like that classic, like this is that classic corporation of mindset of like or even like capitalist mindset of like they're doing something wrong, let's make money off of it to get them to stop.
Yeah, yeah. Basically, like you kind of, are you saying you capitalize off of, kind of, it's kind of twofold. Like you're capitalizing off of tragedy as well as kind of imposing like more taxes or laws on
Yeah, like
the,
hypothetically, if this is the only way to deal with the trash, to
yeah. Well,
um,
yeah, they're finding opportunities.
right, then they're going to
Opportunities.
tax the only way instead of coming up with a collaborative system to make it an alternative. And then it just seems like a way to squeeze money out of people who don't have the money, or a way to perform that action alternatively.
Right. Yeah, I can understand them trying to discourage burning, because of the pollution. But well, there's obviously other things that you can do, and this time of year it just gets bad in general for the country, because in wintertime the Himalayas, apparently they come down with the cold wind in India. And there's a lot of burning to keep warm, so like a lot of people have fires in India. uh, don't know what kind of like you know inner circulation systems they have within their homes and things like that. So that could be something that you could be talking about for, I guess it seems to be a developing um capitalist country, if they don't have like all these things in place already, and they still do depend, 15% of their economy depends on peasant farm work. So I mean, they have to accommodate these people somehow. And a lot of people that are in that socialist circle, they like to think that like the feudalism, which is where this is kind of in, feudalism kind of evolved to capitalism, and then capitalism evolves into socialism, and then eventually you go into communism. But there's still, it's crazy, like people don't think that like peasants can exist within like a capitalist society, but that's kind of exactly what you're seeing.
Yeah, well, also, yeah, peasants 100% can exist in a capitalist society. Uh,
Well, I
like,
mean, in like the classic sense of like the peasant farmer.
yeah.
Yeah, not like
Well,
the slur, the negative connotation or anything like
oh, I see, I
that.
see. Yeah, it is interesting because in America, like in the United States specifically, we have a huge problem with taking subsidies away from small farmers. And I come from a family of farmers.
Oh,
They have a
oh
homestead
yeah,
up
you
in
do. Oh my
Minnesota.
goodness. Yeah.
Huh?
I thought you were talking about your dad.
Oh, no, no. If they were farmers, that was 5 generations ago, and that was not something they wanted to do. That was forced labor.
Oh,
But,
no, no, no. I was
but
talking.
no, I mean, like, my mother's family, they're farmers, and
Okay.
they've had to like sell plots of their land.
Mm.
And like, while it is occupied land, they're not supposed to be there. They've had to like sell plots of their land to like pay just like the monthly upkeep of the farm. And you think about, like, there used to be subsidies like that, like minimum crop, uh like
Mhm.
minimum payment for your crop, so that you don't at least go under. It's not glorious. You're not swimming in money. You're like literally barely keeping lights on. When I say barely, I mean like they turned off the upstairs so that the kitchen could have a light. Like, it's not like a lot of money uh for this. And so like you're taking away subsidies, but you're somehow expanding corporate ownership of agricultural lands. And that is what I would be interested to see, is if there's like a Monsanto equivalent going on in India that's forcing these small time farmers or like rural farmers out of their trade, and like forcing them to move to the city, which we all know is really bad for the environment. Fuck burning stuff. That is really bad for the environment. People moving to large cities.
Well, I mean, that's usually what the plan is. If you want to be capitalist, like you have to have that land. So that's usually what the play is. But you made a really good point. Like these people aren't really making much anyway. So to squeeze these people like even more is just like what would you expect is the breaking point. And there's power in numbers, obviously 250 million people kind of, gathered. Well, what'd you say?
And that is just so many people.
Yeah, no, labor
That's like,
unions.
hey,
Yeah, that's a true example of, yeah, for the rest of the world of how things could be done because India is literally like talking about, restructuring that bill that they passed just because of this. They tried to hold off, but this the farmers brought enough food to hold them over while they're in the city for months. Like
yeah.
they came from northern India all the way into New Delhi. It's like some people traveled over like 600 miles to get there. Some of these farmers and whenever
Um, Now, from what I understand, the protests are only being held, like the destructive protests are only being held from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m.
right, so they're still doing the peaceful protest. I'm not sure how that's going down because
Well, I mean, it's the home of Gandhi, you know.
well, no, just in terms.
The
Well,
guy
yeah.
like famously didn't eat as a protest, and
Well, I'm talking about the location because they shut down like a location that they wanted to go to, but I guess some of the farmers broke through with their tractors anyway, so they're having to kind of protest like on the outskirts of the city, not really in like the main area. So they're trying to keep them at bay. But it's really it's something that should be. This is how you pretty much make changes. This is the voice of the people. And the government needs to listen to them. That's really how that goes. The closest thing that we have in America to like a really strong labor union are those athletes, those professional athletes in the NBA and the NFL. They have labor unions that pretty much work to structure their deals from 5 to 10 years on their kind of blanket guarantees for kind of just players in general, not necessarily like specific wages, but what happened in the NBA in that bubble whenever they took that 1 day strike. Uh, could have been so much more. Could have been so much more. I mean, I'm happy they did. I think they did 2 days, but I mean, I'm just happy they did that much. But it could have been.
Could have
I'm
been
not
more.
saying this, but that could have sparked, kind of like a general strike in America of some sort of. But I'm gonna blame that on something else.
Well, I think a lot of our social services also have unions like USPS, and whenever we had some issues with USPS, like essentially trying to defund and uh render it like defenseless during a time where we really needed USPS. You saw a lot of their labor unions like stepping up, and that I think personally that really helped save USPS over this fall. Um,
Exactly. And
and
that's
also like police officers have unions, and we see how protected they are from things.
uh, yeah,
As cringy as that was.
exactly. But just like general sectors
You've
like
seen a Well, like retail workers, you've
yeah,
seen
retail,
those unions be like banned.
the service
Uh,
industry,
the service industry for sure.
the construction industry, you know, things like that. You could do truck drivers. Like these unions are, this country is just so like we're just so I would say illiterate in that type of those type
They're
of things. Like we don't know
Yeah.
anything about unionizing. Like it's just non-existent in this country.
Well, and unions used to be a lot bigger back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, but we have seen like an active attack on unions and actively dismantling unions to other I honestly think if we still had those unions, which may not have been as strong, but if they were allowed to continue to build, we'd have a higher minimum wage in this country for people in the
Oh
service industry, for
yeah,
people in truck driving jobs, which they get paid a lot, but they could be paid more. Or
exactly.
like in
Yeah,
the retail industry, it's
yeah.
it's something we used to have, and we used to actually have a pretty good basis for it. And there has been active attacks
That
at
is,
the
yeah,
federal level on unions.
yeah. That's a really good point. Just how important having a union is, because speaking of something like Walmart, they could have a union of their own if they were so compelled, just because they have so many workers themselves. I think Walmart employs something like 2 million people. I'm not sure in just this country, it might be worldwide, but
Are there Walmarts internationally? There are.
yeah,
What? I forgot about that. That's my bad. That's my
but
American blinders.
but I was reading this article on Jacobin. The writer, I can't think of his name right now, but basically he talks about how Walmart uses government subsidies like welfare and food stamps, and that'll be kind of a part of the employees like application. Like they'll help them file food stamps.
Instead of just paying them a fair wage.
Exactly. So it's like they actively exploit the government, like doing that in order for them to not pay. So it's like a weird paradox. Yeah.
It
Hundred.
is. I mean, it's corporate greed at its finest, is what it is. Because
Yeah.
I know the CEO of Walmart is rolling. That whole family,
Whole
they're
family.
rolling.
Yeah.
And people at the top, you can make really good money working in corporate Walmart.
Yeah. The
But
daughter.
I've heard like horror stories of people like breaking their arm and having to finish their shift.
Yeah, that's not just in Walmart. I've heard stuff like that in Amazon. People sleeping in their
Hmm.
cars and things like that. So it's
Yeah.
so it's so weird. And Jeff Bezos, he gets all the praise for the $15 an hour, but he kind of got on top of it because he could. It really doesn't mean anything to him. It just looks good, because in actuality, people should be getting paid like close to $25.
Yeah.
That would be oh
Yeah, I mean, it just goes
yeah.
back to whenever like working for a really successful company like that meant that you were getting compensated for how successful the company was doing. And I'm sure, it hasn't been like that in, ever. But there, like, that used to at least be an illusion. We don't have that illusion anymore, which I'm really glad that that has busted, snapped, broken. We don't even have that illusion of like
I
working for
mean,
a company that does well, means you
exactly. Yeah,
do
the
well.
turnover rate is so quick nowadays. Like you end up working for multiple companies before you get to that career job, whereas
Mhm.
you kind of started in one career and you kind of worked your way up that same career, just up the ladders, and you were just there for, however many decades, however many
Mhm.
years you want to be there. But yeah, I definitely agree with you. It's a lot more dehumanizing, I guess you could say nowadays. It's a lot more competitive at the top, and we just don't really have any what you would call race traders. There's just nobody that can really do anything about it because all the millionaires just kind of think along the same lines. Like you see some people that I guess mean well. I would say Bill Gates would possibly be an example of a race trader. He made that foundation and he's doing the research for the vaccines. But yeah, yeah, it's just I would rather go into the direction of making everything universal instead of hyper competing and making everything privatized. So
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it's more examples of corporate greed that like help perpetuate wealth gaps.
yeah,
Um,
and I'm so happy for like the protesters in India for being so like just so stalwart and just so like about it. That's inspiring.
it is, it
Emotional.
is.
Emotional.
I mean, yeah, it's also just it's nice to see how well they're received. Maybe not necessarily by everyone, but just like such large protests. Um, and I don't know. It just honestly, eh, sorry. I thought I was gonna say something, but you're right. It's just the feels.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's definitely real. It's definitely historic, and it's something to look toward, just like a beacon of like what actual change can look like. The fight's not over, it's never over. But things like this, you just like to see. You just love
We
to see
love to
it, dude.
see
You just love to see it. For
it.
real. Yeah. General strike in India, like if we just look at that and just, you know, just just you know just dream, just be imagine it's really just something to be excited about, I guess. You have anything else to say about that before we move?
Mm, no, I don't have a lot of knowledge on it to be honest, but I
No.
do know that like I mean I have what you've explained to me and what I've looked up, but no, I think I'm good.
Okay, for real. So we can move on to um I don't know if you want to introduce this topic. I don't know too much
Oh, okay.
beyond
So,
yeah.
yeah, Elliot Page came out as transgendered last Tuesday. I believe it was Tuesday. I don't think I have to have the date right because let's be honest, he was always transgender. He just had to tell the world.
It's not the
Um,
player.
so, full disclosure, neither of us are trans. Um, I am a part of the LGBTQIA community. I'm always really proud of that. But this is something I have not had to do. I have not had to come out as trans. I'm a cisgendered woman, and I was born into the body that I think is right for me. And I don't know. I'm maybe it's the bubble I'm in. Maybe it's the algorithms I'm in. I don't know. I'm hearing a lot of like positive reaction to his coming out. Um,
Oh yeah, from your bubble.
yeah, from my bubble. What are you hearing from your bubble?
Oh well, I like to frequent, both sides and things like
Yes,
that.
yes.
Well, I definitely 100% agree with you. It's a beautiful thing that he's comfortable enough to introduce himself to the world as he is. Um, And yeah, I feel like that's something that should be normalized. It's kind of, I don't know how many other celebrities are like this. I know people that are famous because they're transgendered, but I don't know any, transgender people that are like already famous, if that makes sense. Well, like, somebody like Elliot, well, Caitlyn Jenner. Is that what
Yeah,
you're
and now we've exhausted the list. Because you're right. A lot of people don't feel comfortable to come out as trans, and we don't want anyone to have to live a lie
right.
simply because it's more convenient. Um,
So I think that the biggest thing that we need to kind of acknowledge with the transgender community is that there is some confusion in learning about it. I know this was kind of hot, 5 years ago, about kind of understanding it, like right before Donald Trump started doing his run. There were people that just had no idea about, that whole culture of, or, the lifestyle of being transgendered. And by kind of being ignorant, they kind of make, ignorant jokes. But those jokes are, they're hurtful. So instead of instead of acknowledging whenever they got checked, they kind of want to, you know, take it personal themselves. So there just needs to be just an understanding of transgender people. And I'm not here to say that I'm the expert to to just like lay it all down, but it really goes a long way if you actually like take the time to like do research about these kind of things. And Elliot Page, because that's who he is. Ellen, that's a dead name. If you say that name, that's you're referring to nobody. That's an insult. Nobody wants to hear that. And I think the main differential or the differentiation that we need to make is probably like the sex and the gender.
mhm.
Like sex is male and female
And intersex.
and intersex. Would you put non-binary in there? Or is that male or
That's gender.
that's
That's more gender. Yeah, that's more
normal?
gender.
And then we kind of get into like the J.K. Rowling stuff. That's how you explain that, because she said that all, or she said men, some like
It was someone said people who menstruate, and she thought it was funny to say, "Oh, I thought we had a word for that. Woman." Well, not all women menstruate. Uh,
it's
even not even all people who have vaginas menstruate.
right. It's a biological. She was describing something biological, so
Mhm.
what she should have said was female.
I'm still iffy on how to use those. But yeah, probably. That's what she meant. That is what she meant. And that was hurtful only because whenever we brought it up again, she just doubled down. She wasn't like, "Oh, I might be wrong. Maybe I should listen and learn." She was like, "Nope, wrong. Not gonna read it. This is how I
Right.
do things."
She was trying
Uh,
to conflate her feelings with transgender people, but I think she was describing somebody that was asexual. She was
mm.
describing somebody asexual whenever critiquing people that feel transgender. And with Elliot Page coming out, I think that's awesome. And the fact that like his appearance hasn't really changed at all, people are I think that's another thing. Like people are like, oh, so like what's gonna happen? Is he gonna change his mind tomorrow? Just like ignorant things like that. But
Yeah. And like we should just address people don't have to look like a man to be considered a man, or like what you think is a man. And people don't like trans men don't have to look masculine to be trans men. Like it's something they feel, it's something they are. And I think that's the whole point, is that the outside isn't matching how they feel, how we feel. And I don't know. I think it's great, but I also think we should remember like he is a white man and he's a famous white man. And so not of course, but even in that situation, there's still so much that he
Oh,
could
great.
face like coming out, but he is still like a rich white man. And we have like trans women, trans men who are like not famous and just at the mercy of people's ignorance,
Mm-hmm.
essentially.
Yeah, like nobody knows who they are, so
Hmm.
it's
And
different.
gosh, it was like what, 3 months ago that Marine was pardoned in the Philippines for killing a trans woman.
Oh wow. Ugh.
Yeah. Oh man, I was like, well,
Yeah,
yeah.
women in general.
Honestly, with the way the Philippines dictator rules Duterte, I didn't like expect anything less, but it just sends a signal to how we view trans individuals
Yeah, if
and
you're
especially basically non-conforming people,
yeah,
people that don't fit in your box of what you think they should look like. And
exactly.
I've always been of the mindset of, who are you to come and tell me where I'm from, what I do, and who I am? That doesn't make sense to me.
Right. Yeah, because man and woman is really just a societal badge. It's a label like given to you because there's more. You could be born not identifying as either one. There is a gray area,
Yeah,
and I think it's interesting that a lot of people want to make it's not an excuse, but they kind of
the
make
argument.
yeah, they make the argument that it is only two just because of like reproduction purposes. Like only a man can like reproduce with a woman, so that's the only two that can be acknowledged apparently. So like I guess
Yeah,
it's kind of like the other that don't look at themselves as male or female. They're such a negligible percentage, small amount that's not natural. That's a I don't want to be disrespectful whenever I say it, but it's not
common.
yeah, it's not a common birth. Like it's kind of like being like a little person or something like that.
Maybe. Well, but you do have to remember, like,
Not a
intersex individuals, they're like, it's the same amount of intersex individuals as it is like natural redheads in the world.
oh really?
And I'm not saying they're all like in Ireland, but like I am saying like the percentages of those are actually like and I'm not saying like all redheads are intersex. I'm just saying the numbers of how many redheads there are in the world is the same as how many intersex people there are in the world.
Yeah,
And
framing
then
it.
like for those people who like to argue like, well, a man and a woman for there are so many women who like can't have children but are like full XX women, and there are so many men who can't have children that are full XY men. And I don't want to say full because that also, but you know what I mean. They are cis men, they are cis women, um,
Yeah, there you
and
go.
those genders or those sexes are assigned to them at birth, and it's
Yeah, they'll be infertile or they'll be sterile and they just can't have kids for
yeah, and that doesn't take away their womanhood or their manhood.
yeah.
It's a lot of people really like to pick and choose
Look at
how
all
to
those,
label
look at all
people.
those dudes in Scotland wearing kilts. What's up with that? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
if you look at it, it's a skirt. It's a skirt, but they want to call it a kilt.
100%. Yes.
Then whenever you see them posing, like they're just like all into it, like really like, you know,
Yeah, and you know, even there are so many different cultures and religions that recognize not only a third sex, but a third gender and a fourth gender. In a lot of indigenous communities in the Americas. Now, when I say the Americas, I mean I'm used to having a map right here, North and South America. I, I'm used to having a map, but like North and South America, like indigenous communities throughout the Americas usually will have some record of recognizing a third gender, whether that be or whether that be a third sex or a third gender, but just don't have such strict rules. I mean, in, what is it, Thailand, like and I'm going to use a word here that I'm not quite sure is correct. Please check me if I'm not using this word correct. But the ladyboy culture in Thailand, like that's not accepted by all, but that is a long-standing thing. In Hawaiian culture, there's acceptance of a third gender. It's kind of everywhere, and I blame it on on Judaism, or not Judaism, but Judo-Christian religion, and just like Abrahamic religions in general, of setting such strict rules of like man and woman has babies, and then like those babies have babies, and like that's just what like that is to me. But in so many cultures and so many religions and so many regions, there's record of not only the acknowledgement of three or more sexes, but three or more genders as well.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. So I think like the main thing with this, besides her or besides Elliot,
Hmm.
it's still kind of new, but besides Elliot coming out and living his free life is the fact that this will be allowed to become normal in society. Like certain things that people want to have be normal in society. I don't see, but I've heard of women in Seattle, like, just like, just hanging out at the park topless, just because,
Yeah, that happens all over the US too. Yeah.
it's like that should be normal. You know what I mean? It might be kind of awkward for guys at first, but like if women want to do that without being, heckled or anything, then it's really on the dudes to control themselves. And it's really similar to, I know we weren't around back then, but whenever what's the word I'm thinking of? Whenever homosexuality was kind of outlawed in America, during
Oh yeah. So are
sodomy.
you talking about like at the beginning of the like the Stonewall riots and stuff?
Well, I'm just thinking of just like sodomy laws in general, like gay sex.
Those have even taken a long time to repeal. Um there's even been like what's the there's even been some sodomy laws on books until like the late 90s, early 2000s. Those have even taken a long time. But I mean, yeah, it is. And it's important to note that at the beginning of like the gay liberation and the gay rights movement, trans individuals were exclusively shut out of that. They were not grouped in. It's not until very, very recently, like I want to say in this new millennia, that we were like, okay, you are people too.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
gay
And
people weren't
and
acknowledged as being like their opinions were only thought as like fads, pretty much. Like, oh, like
mhm.
you'll grow out of that.
Yeah, and I mean, and again, we see women of color just leading the way, but it was a Black woman and a Latino woman, who trans individuals who really like led the way for gay rights, and they weren't even included. So like it's just, even like the gay community and like the LGBTQIA plus community, like we don't have a great history of accepting trans people, and like the US doesn't have a great history of accepting trans people. I mean, hell, even if you watch like Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, that movie does not age well. The end of it ends with everyone throwing up after someone derobing a trans woman. That's how it ends. I used to love that movie, and I rewatched it. Does not age well.
Well, I heard that they were throwing around the F word a lot on like sitcoms. Like I heard it on
Hmm.
Wayans Brothers. I was like, yo. Is
Yeah, and
that
it's crazy because we've been like conditioned to laugh at trans people and not take them seriously and just think of them as a man in a dress, a woman in a suit. And admittedly, like trans women have had a lot harder time, because they are seen as men in a dress, and that's considered like
Yeah.
less manly and and like of course it is, they're women, but like but like, you know, it's, to me it's that toxic masculinity of like, why would you not want to be a man? Men are
Yeah.
the best.
Yeah.
But I we've just been conditioned to laugh at trans people. We've been conditioned to think that they're trying to trick us. In what world?
Yeah.
In what world?
Yeah. Because that.
um yeah,
Go
I've
ahead.
had several conversations with some family members. I'll even like name how, like leave how they're related to me out. Some family members on how trans people aren't trying to trick you. Trans women don't want to trick you into sleeping with them. In fact, they want to be fully open because you don't understand, like their life is on the line. If they're killed, no one cares, no one notices, no one goes to prison. They're just a problem solved.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Uh, yeah, and at the end of the day, this is somebody else's like personal decision. I don't understand why people want to kind of deputize things of that nature. You know, I understand if you don't understand it and you don't get it, you can make the efforts in like being less ignorant. Like even I don't understand it completely, but I make the efforts to want to try to understand it. But at the end of the day, this stuff doesn't affect me whatsoever. This affects me nada. Just people like you said, it's people being suspicious that they're gonna get like caught like in bed.
Yeah, and it's like no one cares about you that much.
Yeah,
Rewind, zoom out.
yeah,
Like no one cares about you that
yeah.
much
It's the
to
most
trick you into sleeping with them. Zoom out. The world is so much bigger than your dick
yeah. Have
or your vagina or your genitals.
you ever watched the Boondocks?
Yeah.
Whenever Tom, he was like really scared of going to jail because he had like a fear of like getting anally raped. It was like an irrational fear because he was like such a straight laced dude, and there was like no way he would ever go to jail. But he ended up going to jail because he was
Well,
on a
because it's the Boondocks.
yeah, yeah he was like he was like the chaperone on a field trip, and the field trip was to prison for some reason. So
Oh man. Yeah. Um I'm really happy for Elliot Page. And a lot of people are wondering if he's going to continue playing his role on Umbrella Academy, I saw, which I'm like, he's an actor. His job is to act a
what
part.
his role?
Yeah, and like, to be honest, he was acting as a woman for like the last how many years. So yeah, of course he can still play this part. And we talk so much about like how representation matters.
Mhm.
Like being able to see a version of yourself matters. It matters so much. And like I can't remember the first time. It matters so much to be able to see yourself in a different in something that you're not used to, like being able to see that possibility. It doesn't mean you never thought of it before, but you know, for that like trans kid growing up away from trans resources, being able to see Elliot Page and be like, hey, what? This is this is possible. The first time I saw a femme lesbian, I was like, what? I can do that. Okay. Okay.
I don't have to wear boot cuts.
I was like, oh, I can. Duh, I can. Okay, why didn't I? Okay, that helps.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Yeah, I agree with everything you're saying. Representation definitely matters. If you bring it on with race, and race is another thing that's not real. Race and gender, those are just labels that are placed upon you by society. So I
And
love
those things really benefit a capitalist society. It depends on women and people of color to
yeah,
be paid less and exploited.
exactly, exactly. And I agree that they matter in terms of like those type of context or historical context to like, put into context what happened to.
Well, yeah, and to explain the hierarchies.
Exactly, yeah, but they're not real. They're not real, and people. at the end of the day, shouldn't get hung up on these things. Like if Elliot chooses to be Elliot, then it doesn't matter. You know, it really doesn't matter because we've all acknowledged the elephant in the room. Biologically, we already know what Elliot was born as, but as he chooses to portray himself to the world, you know, you have to be respectful of that.
Yeah, and like this is just who he is. And so yeah, it would just
Yeah.
to me it doesn't. I like I said, I'm so of the mindset of like, who are you to tell me anything about me? Like anytime I hear this, I'm like, that's crazy that people are that worried about it. Yet I know some crazy shit happening in your life right now that you're like ignoring specifically to talk about this. But yeah. But yeah, I mean, representation matters. I mean, hell, representation matters. I honestly don't understand how I don't, not that I don't understand how, but like, um, within like the POC community and within the Black community, I've had some conversations of like very like anti-trans thoughts and anti-trans outlooks on things. And a lot of it is like hypermasculinity that can be traced back PTSD all the way to slavery. We can do it, but like, but you know, it's just I really think, you know, Black people and people of color and indigenous people, like we should pretty much we should be able to understand like representation matters. Being able to accept people as they are matters. I mean, hell, I remember when Barack Obama was sworn in as president,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I
That's
think
remarkable. Yeah.
I was very young because, you know, I'm very young. No, I'm joking.
Yeah.
But
Well,
I was
look,
still pretty young. I was in high school, and I remember seeing a Black man on TV, and I was like, or not just on TV, but being sworn in as our president of the United States. And I'm going to be honest, you know, whenever we were kids and they told us we could be anything, you could even be the president. I never let my mind go to that because I knew it was going to be disappointing. And I knew it was going to be disappointing because in my head, I never really thought that could happen. And when I saw it, I remember crying and being like super anxious for like the first 100 days in office. Anytime I saw him anywhere, do you remember that anxiety of like,
you're terrible.
no, no one else thought that? I thought that. I was like, every time I saw him, I was like, man, we know that people won't just let a black guy be. And
Mm.
now this guy is like,
No, they definitely tried. They definitely tried him. They definitely tried him. But
they
yeah.
did. They did. Uh, but yeah, I mean, representation matters. I'm really happy to see trans men out here doing the thing,
Yeah.
being themselves. And, you know, I don't want to say that we've seen a lot more trans women than men because honestly, we're not going to compare. That's how the oppressor wins.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it
That's
is, yeah, it is almost easier to see trans women because of the stigma that we put on trans women and that idea we have of like, oh, they're just men in a dress,
mm-hmm.
which, you know, again, I'm acknowledging that that's a dumb thing, but it's harder to see trans men. And so not only for him to come out and say like, I'm a trans man, but to make it so public, like he had that whole letter written.
Yeah.
And so this is something we visibly get to see. And I think we'll start seeing it more, but not necessarily people having to come out after they're famous. And I am here for it. I'm so ready. I'm excited. I love it.
It's
The
a
future is like queer and brown, and I am just about it right now.
Yeah, Future's wow. This is all types of stuff. I saw this. This is unrelated. This is unrelated completely. But there's this website that I saw for like virtual influencers. It was like a whole website for like literal like fake influencers. Like you know that Gecko thing.
Yeah.
Good on there.
Uh,
Yeah, yeah. They consider him an influencer. It was weird. Yeah.
huh. Yeah, it's interesting. Even like what makes you famous and like what makes you an influencer. Like I looked up famous people born on my birthday, and 46 out of 48 of them were TikTok stars.
Ugh, okay.
And I was like, well, you know, me and Andre 3000, we're still hanging tight.
Yeah, that's random. TikTok stuff.
Yeah, a lot of TikTok stars were in like my famous people that share my birthday list, and I was like, interesting. This is a big thing that like I think I am only really now starting to grasp.
Streamers are really famous, apparently. Like people that stream, like more prominent than like athletes sometimes, you know?
I know the like video game streaming that was getting paid
Yeah. Yeah.
way more. In fact, when I was like taking care of a young kid who couldn't stop playing video games, I was like, well, if you can't stop, you better like take a Red Bull and keep playing because you could get so good that you could pay for everyone to live here.
Definitely. So, all right, we're gonna wrap up the Elliot Page story. You got anything else to say?
Nope, just here for it.
Yep. Nice to meet you, Elliot. Um, I haven't been record. I haven't recorded the time. I don't know how long we've been on.
50 minutes.
Oh, you have it? Wow, look at you go. Okay.
Man,
So I don't really have any I don't have like a lot of I don't really have anything else. So I'm just gonna like fire some stuff off, see what you think. I told you about that kicker, that college kicker. She was like the first woman to
oh,
to be on a football team in college.
okay.
Yeah, she was the punt or she was the kicker, I think. Yeah, interesting. How do you feel about that?
I like it, honestly. I don't know. I was told I couldn't be in wrestling when I was a kid because I was a girl.
Yeah.
Like, I'll never forget his name. Coach Gallup told me I could not join the wrestling team because I was a girl and I would probably like the boys too much to wrestle them.
He lied to you.
He did lie to me. I did not like the boys too much to wrestle them. I wanted to beat their asses. My dad was like, I don't know if you've met her. She's really not interested.
We actually wrestled with this girl. You remember Brandon? Name drop.
Yeah, there was a girl a couple school districts over, right?
Yeah, and they wrestled in middle school. He used to get his ass beat until he like, actually got stronger. But like, yeah,
Testosterone really is a
yeah,
bitch.
like girls actually like really flexible and like really good technically. So like, until about high school, the girls could wrestle the guys, and like the girls would beat the the guys. Like seriously, like it depends on what weight class, but yeah, the girls would take it to them. But
Yeah, I honestly I don't think that being a cis woman or having more estrogen or anything could like bar you out of a sport. I think that's crazy, and I honestly think these kids that are trans, these kids that are gender nonconforming or non-binary, we're gonna see a lot more integration in sports. Honestly, I
integration,
think it's good. Did I say integration?
yeah,
I did.
you think so?
Yeah, honestly, I do. Um, well, not just that, like there are like cis women
Right.
who just like naturally have more testosterone than other cis women, and that doesn't make them less of a woman. But what was it, a year or two ago? There was that track athlete who like they um they basically told her that her hormones were too much to be like her testosterone levels were too high, even though those were her natural hormones, and they are now having her take like hormone suppressants to compete against other women when like that's her natural edge.
Yeah,
And honestly, to me, it's like I don't know, like
that's messed
it's
up.
just
That's messed up.
it is messed up, and it's like over regulating in this case a black woman's body to compete with her natural edge.
Yeah, that's like cutting a couple inches off of LeBron. It's like you can't teach height, you know? This guy
Yeah, that is
what you got.
great. That's great and something we should not do.
Yeah, it's kind of like Serena Williams, they try to disqualify her all the time.
Hmm.
Yeah,
And honestly, I think you see that more with black women,
yeah,
but um,
they like to describe her as like an animal. Oh, she's such a beast. Oh yeah, she's a gorilla on the court. Like who says
mhm.
that? Who says
Who
she's
says that
a
about
gorilla on the court? You know?
also like anything dealing with like primates? If you're gonna compare primates, use human because especially for black people, especially for Asian people, the history of those words to describe us
Right. Yeah.
is long, deep, and racist as fuck.
Messed up. Yeah. So this woman, she was a kicker on Vanderbilt. That's the
Okay.
college. Vanderbilt. they haven't won a game all season. I guess she got her chance in the middle of the season. The coach got fired after the game. I don't know if it was correlated to him putting her out there or just their record in general, but that's as far as I know. I don't really know too much. It's good for her, but I don't watch football anymore, so I don't, I don't care.
Yeah.
Pope Francis. I think he. What's going on? I think he just. I don't know what the process is in like indoctrinating like new members of um, the Vatican, but he just uh, indoctrinated. I don't know what the word is. A black cardinal, basically, the first black cardinal.
Huh. Where's he from?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
I didn't. I didn't dig that far. Thanks for putting
Well,
me on.
because the current pope is from Argentina, and he's like the first Latin American pope.
You talking about the Pope? I thought you were talking about the Cardinal.
No, I was saying like the pope
Oh, I don't know
who
what.
indoctrinated, who's like doing that. He's like the first Latino,
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
or first Latin American pope. He's from Argentina.
Okay, yeah. The Cardinal is African American.
Wow, he's American?
Yeah, African American. Wilton Gregory. That's his name. Yeah.
That sounds like a lot. Yeah, that sounds right. That sounds right. Well, I guess all you had to do was read the name. We could have guessed like one of 4 places. Maybe 5. But yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
I not surprised that it took this long.
Not surprised.
No.
Well, I think Pope Francis like just recently talked about homosexuality. Said like he like literally had to come out and say that's not a priority of the church because so many, not so many, but like it was still being discriminated against in Catholicism. So he was like, hey, like I know it's not in the faith, but it's not a priority in the faith. So stop messing with these people.
Stop being a general dick.
Exactly. Yeah, I like Pope Francis. Like he's a really really cool
He
dude.
seems very progressive. He also came out like in favor of contraception, which is like huge for the Catholic Church.
Mm,
A lot of the like more progressive minded people that I know that like grew up Catholic or are still practicing Catholics love him
yeah.
almost irrationally in my head, but it's because I'm not Catholic that I think that.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't mind him a lot. He actually spoke with some delegates from the NBA, talking about like the labor stuff. He kind of wanted to know about American issues, and he saw he basically saw the what were we calling them? Not the protests, but he saw the strikes basically from the NBA players, the 2 night strikes, and he was like, "Oh, that's interesting. Tell me more about what's going on in your country." So
Man, he missed an opportunity because the WNBA was way more on top of it than the NBA. Oh man. Uh, uh,
yeah,
but that's interesting. That's really cool. I always think of him as not affecting like things that I do or my life, but a lot of people go off of what he says, and like, a lot of people do believe that he is like like he has a direct link to God. For me, that's my grandma. My grandma has that, so I'm not worried. But like, I guess, yeah. I mean, him taking an ish like taking like him just being such a powerful figure, I guess him taking an interest in those issues would be a big deal
yeah, definitely.
for non-Catholics even.
Yeah, 100%. Um, yeah, so I don't, I'm not Catholic, so I just thought it was interesting that I guess, first black guy to
Yeah,
be
yeah.
up in the Vatican. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. I got one more for you. See what you think about this. Did you hear about the exploding minks in Denmark?
Minks.
Minks. Yeah, like the furry little animals.
Oh my god, they explode.
No, well, under these circumstances, they did. So like, they were at a farm. Yeah, yeah. We're not really ending on the best note, but
I'm sorry, I'm not laughing. I thought I heard you wrong. Go on.
what you thought? What you think I said?
I didn't know, I didn't care, but I was like, surely he's not talking about like the cat.
Oh,
And then
yeah, the actual the animals. So
then
yeah,
I pictured it and I was like, well, great, because that's not real. But then it was.
yeah. So basically, a farm full of minks in Denmark, they contracted coronavirus, so they had to put them all down, and they killed them and they put them in a mass grave. But the thing is it's crazy because like I guess the decomposition, like the gas that created it, caused them to, build up and actually like explode in the mass graves. Yeah. And they dug the graves like too close to like a source of water, so they had to dig them back up. Yeah. Yeah, we don't have to talk about this, but I just
Oh
thought.
my God. I don't want to laugh, but it's like the rolling rigmarole that is this fucked up situation that led to like water poisoning and exploding dead cats. Have you ever played the game Taco Cat?
No.
Or no, it's called Exploding Kittens.
How'd you get from Taco Cat to
There's a card in it called Taco Cat.
okay.
There's a game called Exploding Kittens, and essentially you just like draw a bunch, and if you like get the one that explodes, you have to like give up one of your cards. It's a whole thing, but holy shit, Denmark, take it to a whole new level.
Yeah, I guess they're
Which
known
is
for
gonna
their.
happen first? They're gonna explode, or they're gonna poison our water supply?
No, I guess it's a rush. Rush to find out. But yeah, this whole COVID-19 situation is just like wild, just making a lot of bad situations worse.
Yeah, it's basically forcing people to look at all of the ways that we are being exploited. It's forcing people to look at the ways of all of the ways that we are exploiting other people. And it's honestly, I think it's a great awakening.
A great way.
I,
I
like it's a plague for sure. It's a plague. People are dying
yeah,
like by the thousands, by the tens of thousands, and uh it's really forcing people to look at the system we've set up to create something like this.
yeah, 100%. Um,
Because we've 100% created the conditions for this.
yeah, we let them fester for a little bit too long.
Well, not only that, but even in like the US where you're seeing like, well, there's a bunch of reasons why we have really high death rates, but even in the US where you're seeing like this is, generations of us moving people out of rural areas into cities, and now there's a virus that like really festers when you have a lot of people together touching, doing things. And we've like going back to what we said at the beginning, like we created this environment.
Right.
We like we force people to like we force people off the land and to like that and to more wholly depend on like the government, and now the government can't
Yeah.
one get its shit together to help protect us, but two like also threw out like the pandemic preparedness plan that Obama had left. And then three, like just like we've created the conditions for this to fester, for this to spread, for this to start. And I really think we're like, this is going to happen more often than not. We're not going to have to wait another 100 years for a plague, or I guess the last plague was the AIDS pandemic, but we're not going to have to wait another 30 to 40 years for a pandemic. It's going to happen sooner and sooner because we've created the conditions by like
Well,
ruining our environment.
well, there's different parts of the world that deal with viruses regularly. It's just the Western world, we're just so ill-equipped to handling it. You see, America is literally the worst country in terms of cases and deaths. And even though we are the worst in terms of those numbers, like yeah, we are ill-equipped compared to like countries like or continents like Asia and continents like Africa who deal with like, Asia deals with different viruses, every once in a while. Africa, they have malaria seasonally because freaking mosquitoes are wild out there. But America just ill-equipped for any type of mass virus. And although we are the biggest number of cases and deaths in the world, I feel like us getting the vaccine, I don't know if it would do us any good because people don't even want to take the initial steps of distancing and wearing the mask. So, like the vaccine, people are going to be even more skeptical of that, first of all. And even if we do, well, I feel like the only way vaccines will be taken is for like kids in school. You know how you do have to take uh,
Hmm.
shots whenever you go to college, and some kids that or kids have to take them in school and stuff like that. But secondly, if we get the vaccine and we somehow manage to get Americans to take it, or people in the Western world, let's include Europe, all of North America, like we can pretty much go back to normal, which is a good thing. But like we pointed out earlier with India, and then continents like Africa who have to deal with malaria and tuberculosis and HIV. Coronavirus is something that's compounding. So for these countries, if you can get coronavirus off of their backs, then they'll just go back to like dealing with malaria like usual. Like we'll go back to just like day-to-day living. That's why this virus is so, it just seems so drastic worldwide because it's affecting the Western world so much.
That's a
Because
good point.
tuberculosis, before COVID even existed, tuberculosis was already more dangerous. I believe tuberculosis kills like 10 million people a year, or there's about 10 million cases. I don't want to inflate the numbers, but it's either 10 million deaths or 10 million cases, which is just already just a lot more than COVID, yearly. So people, I'm not saying that COVID isn't important, but people are prioritizing COVID over these other things when they should be kind of dealt with simultaneously. But it's hard to deal with the things simultaneously. So while America and the other Western countries will be fine if we just do what we do and get the vaccine, we can go back to normal. But these other countries, they still have other things that they've been dealing with before COVID just came to town.
Huh. That's a really good point. That's a really good point. I always forget about that. Sometimes, like, my privilege as an American is just really blinding.
No, yeah, no, I
Um,
mean, that's something that I read about, and it's something that you just don't think about until like you see, like you have to kind of put it into that type of perspective.
well, and even thinking about like Ebola, and how hard that hit, especially West Africa. What was that? 2017?
I'm not good with.
Yeah, that was 2016, 2017, and that hit Western Africa really hard. But what's crazy is you mentioned like tuberculosis
And
and HIV and
look at who helped them. It was like little Cuba that like sent doctors over there out of like all the countries in the world. Like it was like some little Caribbean country that sent their doctors to deal
a
with.
socialist Caribbean country.
Yeah, to deal with Ebola. Like what the heck? This is crazy. So continue.
Yeah, well, I was just saying, and then you mentioned like HIV and malaria and tuberculosis. We have vaccines and stuff for all of it. It's literally like a lack of access
Uh,
for these like countries, uh, and I won't say the whole continent of Africa because I don't think it's the whole continent, but like for a lot of these like countries in Africa and Asia and like and in the Americas, like we have vaccines, we have like treatments. There are people with HIV and AIDS living longer than people without it because we have like medication that now granted they're rich, we have like medication that they can like take to
yeah.
suppress it. And basically, oh, I heard not I heard but like now like HIV medicine can like lower your numbers to undetectable and untransmittable.
Oh wow.
That is crazy. How is this not available
Right.
for free worldwide? Exploitation.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, definitely. And I agree with you on that. There was something that you said I want to make a point about. Hopefully I don't lose it. It'll come to me in a second.
HIV vaccines are available. Motherfuckers with HIV are living longer than people without HIV. People who have access to HIV are obviously usually a little more wealthy.
Nah, it'll
Sorry, I might have helped.
no, you're good. It'll come to me, but You said something about like the Great Reset, or you said something about that, but I heard I don't know if you've heard of Alec Jones, that conspiracy theorist, but
No, I haven't. I
yeah,
didn't mean to roll my eyes.
no, he talks about this thing called the Great Reset, and he talks about it in a crazy way. But I'm like, you know what? That might not be so bad, you know? Maybe we might need a great reset. You know, like it wouldn't be so terrible to try to just kind of restart the way that we kind of operate with life and everything like that. I,
Yeah.
at
I
least,
would like to see value placed on things that like are real,
yeah, yeah.
i.e., not money.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Um, yeah, I think we can leave it at that unless you have anything else to say.
I do not. I
Yeah.
talked my whole brain out.
Yeah, I think we're good. That was a good combo. So
Yeah.
yeah, we're gonna end it there. Hope you all enjoyed the pod. So I think I'm gonna try and post this to YouTube because the video actually doesn't look awful today.
Okay.
So people listening to the podcast, be sure to check out the video if you want to see our pretty faces. It'll be my first and last name. I'll put it in the podcast descriptions where you're listening. So yeah, thank you all for listening, and we will see you on the next one.
Thank you. Goodbye.